up, you guys? The Curious Owl here, and Oscar's apparently going to interrupt the intro, but today we are going to be doing my December 2022 TBR. Okay, so I apologize if the camera gets shaken up at all or you hear grinding in the background. Oscar is chewing on a bone up here with me because I'm testing him once again to see if he can be a good boy while I film. So we're going to have to deal with the bone chewing in the background, or actually more so in the foreground as he's sitting right in front of me, as you can tell by the camera shaking. Anyway, so today we are going to be going over my December 2022 TBR. It is very cold up here as it is getting into winter time, which is exciting. It's the end of the year. It's the final month of the year, and so I am looking to almost specifically finish up my anticipated reads. I had meant in November to really truck through a lot of them, and I did get through a few in the month of November, but as many of you may know, especially if you watched my update video that I will have posted at this point on Tuesday, I ended up actually having a lot of life changes happen in November, which caused me to have a little bit of some difficulty in terms of reading on a consistent basis. I think I now have a little bit more of a set schedule now, a month into my new job, so I'm hoping that in December my reading will pick up a little bit more again. But a lot of the books I had mentioned in my November 2022 TBR are being carried over into December, but really there are only two things I absolutely need to read this month, one of which being my Wheel of D20 read for the month, and also the Brandon Sanderson book for this month. The two book clubs I am normally a part of have been put on hold for this month. Is perfectly fine, gives me a little bit more flexibility when it comes to reading my other books that I had planned on. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this first thing, which is the Wheel of D20 pick for this month. In the month of November, I did complete my 2 reads I needed to complete for the Wheel of D20, so that does mean that in December, I only have to read 1 book in the entirety of the month for December, and if I can get through that 1 book, in January, starting off the new year, I will not have to play the Wheel of D20, and I will get to have an entirely mood-free month, which is perfect because for my Battle of the Bookish peeps, you might understand that January is when we do one of our rounds. And so it is super awesome that I was able to pair this up really well so that in the future I can basically make it where anytime the big rounds of Battle of the Bookish are going, I will hopefully have a mood read month where I can make sure I read as much as I can for the readathon and not have to worry. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go to the spin and the roll for this month. Hey guys, so today we are going to be doing our spin for the only book we're going to be needing to read for the Wheel of D20. So if you guys are not familiar with how this is going to work, if I can read this book that I have slated for the Wheel of D20 for this month, that means that in January I will be able to have an entirely free month where I get to stay away from the Wheel of D20 for an entire month and just basically do a lot of free reading, which is going to be really great because January is typically the time that I do the Battle of the Bookish large month-long readathons, and so I like to do that where I have that month away from the Wheel of D20 if I can manage it, so that I can have more flexibility when it comes to the books I want to read for that readathon. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and do the only spin that we need to do for December and see what we end up getting for our prompt. And the prompt we get is a book that's black. So black on the cover, has black font, whatever the case may be. Okay, this is pretty general, so this can be basically anything as long as there's some form of black. So I guess let's go see what I can come up with. All right, so here we are. We are going to now roll for our prompt for black on the cover. So for this one, I have put Rhythm of War, the 4th book in the Stormlight Archive, which does have a little bit of black here on the side and then on the spine. This is for the read-along that I've been doing with Bree and Brandy for the Cosmere stuff for Brandon Sanderson. This is the last book for this read-along that we've been doing. Holy crap, this is going to be a chonker, and I've not really enjoyed this series so far as much as I've enjoyed other series of Brandon's, so that's why that's on this side. And the one that I would like to read more is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This is one of my anticipated reads for the year, and I've been meaning to get to it, and I kind of want an excuse to read it this month, so let's go ahead and see what the D20 is going to give us. Yay! Okay, so if you guys can't see that, it is an 18, which means I get to read the Atlas 6 in the month. I have to read this anyway in the month for the read along, but I get to finally read this one. I'm so excited. So as you guys saw, the winner for the role for a book with black on the cover ended up being the Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This is a 2022 release for me. I've been anticipating. Technically, this was released, I think, much earlier, more like 2020-ish, but the fully published version through a traditional publisher, I believe, was earlier this year, and the sequel to this just came out in November, so I've been meaning to read it for a long time. I think that I'm going to enjoy it at least a little bit, and I hope I enjoyed enough to read the second book because I've heard that this is a really fun series for a lot of people who like competition-based stories and especially magic schools and things like that. So I do hope I will enjoy this, and I'm very happy to finally be able to have one of these kinds of books on my TBR officially so that I can at least have the motivation to get through it. Even though it did not win the Wheel of D20 read, the Brandon Sanderson book for this month, like I said, is Rhythm of War, the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive. This is not the final book, I believe. I do believe there's going to be at least one more book after this, but this is a very, very nice, floppy, tall paperback. I have been enjoying this series for the most part. I was talking about this with Bree from Bree Cherie Reads, who's one of the hosts for the Brandon Sanderson read-along, along with Randy for Books with Brandy Shanae. I've been liking this series to an extent, but it's not my favorite series of the Cosmere ones that Brandon has created. I think that this is just one of those really high epic fantasy series, just like with the Wheel of Time, that I find that is really hard for me to fully keep track of. But I do love certain elements of this series. Like, Shallan is one of my most favorite characters in the entire series. I absolutely love her complexity, especially in Oathbringer, which I'm still currently finishing up right now. So I am excited to see how this one ends up going because this was like a really highly anticipated release. I want to say last year when it was finally released. I think it was 2021 when this got published. But this was really highly anticipated because I guess the end of Oathbringer was a really big cliffhanger for a lot of people, and they were really excited for when Rhythm of War was going to come out. And I have heard that Rhythm of War is pretty good in terms of, like, people really enjoyed this one in terms of continuing the story of the series. Okay, so now we're going to go into the rest of the books I had slated for November that I did not read that I still would like to read in the month of December. The first one being All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. I love Sabaa Tahir's writing with the Ember and the Ashes series, even though I never finished the series, but I think this is going to be a really good, like, more contemporary story. I've heard really good things about it. She's gotten so much praise for it, so I would like to be able to read this one pretty soon. Is The Book of Living Secrets by Madeleine Roux. Madeleine Roux is an author I read many years ago that wrote a series called the Asylum series. It was a kind of paranormal asylum story, basically, and she also just released a Critical Role story that is involving a character from the Mighty Nine. I have not watched anything from the Mighty Nine, but I really liked Madeleine's writing, so I do think that I'm going to enjoy that, and I think I'm going to enjoy this, which I believe is like another YA, like, paranormal, but more so like witchy kind of thing. It is Electra by Jennifer Saint. I do have also her book Ariadne that I think I got either last Christmas or the Christmas before, and I have not read it as of yet, but Electra is kind of like a companion novel, I think, to Ariadne. They're both Greek retellings of actual Greek stories, and I have heard that they're really good and well done stories, similar to if you like Madeline Miller, which I've not read Madeline Miller, but I think that if I like this, I will probably like Madeline Miller based on what most people have told me. Next, I have a very anticipated author, again, because I've read multiple books by this author and have loved every single one of them, and that is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. Ruta Sepetys is my #1 historical fiction author to go to. I love the way that she takes real life events and creates fictional stories, but it actually really does feel like you could see this have happened in the past. Like, basically the way that she creates these characters within these time frames that are so detailed and so real, it feels like it's actually more of a nonfiction as opposed to a fictional story, if that makes sense. This is placed in 1980s Romania, where there is a revolution that's going on, and I picked this up because obviously it's Brutus Epites, but I also did not know that in the 1980s there was a war and a revolution in Romania. Next book is This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. I have not really read any Tahara Mafi. I did try to read the first book in the Shatter Me series, and I didn't care for it, but it was kind of one of those things where I think that because of this kind of story it was and the time it was published, it was just not really something I enjoyed, because it was definitely that, you know, mid-2010s YA whiny character kind of story, and so I just wasn't jiving with it. And so I do think that this is something that's going to be a little bit more my speed, because I have heard that even if you don't like the Shatter Me series by Tahara, that the rest of her books are actually better. And I do have another book of hers called A Very Large Expansive Sea that is more of a contemporary. So I think if I can enjoy her fantasy, at least like her more recent young adult fantasy, I think I will enjoy her young adult contemporary, similar to how I believe I feel about Saba Tahir. It is one I'm a little hesitant to read, and it's because I've heard some really very negative things about this, and it is The Book of Night by Holly Black. I've not really read anything by Holly Black. I never read the Spiderwick Chronicles when I was a kid. It was just not something I was interested in. So this would be my first foray into Holly Black, even though I also do have the entire series of The Cruel Prince. This is just an author I've been really hesitant to read because I've heard some very mixed and mostly negative things about her writing. So I'm going to try to go into this with an open mind. This is her adult debut, and I just heard that in terms of an adult story, it was not hitting for a lot of people, so I am a little nervous. Is Hide by Kiersten White. I have not really read a Kiersten White book before. I have quite a few of them though, and so this is kind of like her newest one that is supposed to be a thriller that takes place in an abandoned amusement park where, like, I guess it's some kind of a competition to the death of some kind. It sounds promising. I hope I enjoy it because I do have more by Kiersten White that are more fantasy-based that I would like to get into. Next, I have I Kissed Sarah Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I absolutely loved Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey. I thought it was so adorable, so I'm very excited for this one. I did not read One Last Stop, and I would like to, so I think if I read I Kissed Sarah Wheeler, I'm going to almost want to read One Last Stop a lot sooner, just because I really did like the way that Casey wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I think I'm going to really enjoy this one. Next, I have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Again, not really read much by Riley Sager, has been one of those authors I've been wanting to read for a while, and this is his newest book, so I've been thinking that for a lot of these authors that I haven't read from as of yet, I would start with their more recent releases and then kind of work my way backward as I can. So I would like to be able to read this one, get an idea of what he's currently doing, and then read some of the other books, because I know some of his older books are a little hit or miss for some people, so I kind of want to see what his better stuff is first before going back and finding the crappier things. Similar to how I would like to do this with a lot of other authors. I have Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong. I do realize though that if I want to read this one, I technically have to read the These Violent Delights series first, which I do have both books of. I think that this one is going to be something I would push off to the very last place in the month, because I will have to read These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, because of the fact that this is a book that I guess is a companion novel of sorts, where it takes place in the same world as These Violent Delights, and there are some things mentioned in here that you wouldn't know unless you read These Violent Delights, which is giving me more reason to actually finish that book, because I tried reading it I want to say almost 2 years ago, and I really liked it, but I lost my library copy because I had to return it, and I never picked it back up, so I would like to restart it because I did really enjoy it. So this one is probably not going to be finished by the end of the month, but I may actually make some progress by reading at least the other 2 books, so we'll see how that goes. And finally, the last one is In a Garden Burning Gold by Rory Power. I absolutely loved Wilder Girls by Rory Power. Did not read Burn Our Bodies Down, but I heard it was kind of hit or miss for a lot of people, so I am excited for this one though. Again, really loved Rory's writing when it came to Wilder Girls. I really liked the sci-fi element that was played into this. I do think this is supposed to be relying more on fantasy, if nothing else, but I'm really excited for this nonetheless because I really, again, did enjoy Rory's writing, and I think I'm gonna at least like this, if nothing else. So those are all the books I am hoping to read in December. Again, some of them I may get to, some I might not. It really depends because of the fact that I also have like Rhythm of War that's going to be read this month. And with my new work schedule, things are a little hit or miss. But these two down here will definitely be read in this month. I know that for a fact. The rest of them, I probably will try to get through as many as I can. And then I think, like I said, with Foul Lady Fortune, I might push that one off because I'm going to have to read the other two books in the These Violent Delights duology first before I get to that one. So at the very least, I can get through, I would hope, some of these ones, probably the physical ones first, and then go to my ebooks that I have. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!